Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone, and I call to order the regular Board of Education meeting on February 26, 2026 at 6:32 p.m. in the boardroom of Oak Park and Little Forest High School. Please call the roll.
Mr. Brisbane,
Here.
Dr. Odell,
Here.
Mr. Arkin,
Here.
Mr. Gertz, Dr. Livingston.
Here.
Mr. Brandhorst.
Here.
And Ms. Williams-Lee.
Here. I move to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district and independent contractors and specific volunteers, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act. Collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, the purchase or lease of real estate property for the use of the public bodies, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be required, and litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when a public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Dr. Odell,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Brisbane,
Yes.
Mr. Brandhorst.
Yes.
Dr. Livingston,
Yes.
and Ms. Williams-Lee.
Yes. Okay, we are going to reconvene, open session at 7:30. And we will start, with our student showcase.
Okay, we are thrilled to have two student showcases tonight. We are going to start off with our state qualifying cheer team, and I believe our coach, Brianna Burton, is here to launch us into it. So it's all yours, Brianna. Just push the button until it goes green, and then you're good to go.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, OPR staff, and other community members. I am honored to be here tonight to present the varsity competitive cheerleading team for the 2025-2026 season. My name is Brianna Burton, and I have had the incredible privilege of coaching this remarkable group of athletes. Since last May, these athletes have demonstrated unwavering dedication. They have committed countless hours to training, pushed through mental and physical exhaustion, and balanced games, practices, competitions, and rigorous academic schedules, all in pursuit of reaching their fullest potential this season. Our competitive season did not begin as strongly as we would have hoped. There were moments, many of which I'm sure they would agree, when a trip to state felt just out of reach. Unexpected changes and injuries challenged our momentum, and as a team, we realized we needed to regroup and return to the drawing board. Grounded in our core values of accountability, grit, and most importantly, family, the team reset with renewed focus and determination. They approached the second half of the season with a level of care, confidence, and unity that was truly inspiring. Their goal became simple: be better than the performance before. That mindset led to impressive results, including a top 5 finish at a competition featuring more than 20 teams and a consistent 4th place standing in the West Suburban Silver Conference. By the time we reached sectionals, our message was clear: leave it all on the mat and have no regrets. Whether it was going to be their final performance of the season or not, I wanted them to walk away proud of themselves and proud of one another. No matter the outcome, we would leave that gym the same way we entered it, as a family. Luckily for us, the results did go our way. The team earned a 4th place finish, you need top 5 to qualify for state, and achieved their highest score of the season, a 91.70. With that performance, they advanced to their first state finals appearance in program history. The joy on their faces, the screams, the tears, are memories I will carry with me forever. The top 25 teams in each division across the state advanced to Bloomington to represent their schools, and your OPR varsity cheerleaders ended their season with a 25th spot. While their performance at state may not have been their strongest of the season, nothing could diminish what they accomplished. History was made simply by stepping onto that mat. This team's resilience, heart, and unity define what it means to represent our school. I cannot be more proud of the young women standing behind this achievement. Now, it's my honor to present to you this history-making, legacy engraving team. Starting with our leaders of the pack, our seniors, we have Chelsea Hawkins, Callie Reagan, Eliana Villagomez, as well as Catherine Harris and Victoria Tosin, who could not be in attendance tonight. Our juniors, Jada Clay, Sylvia Hardy, Stephanie James, Sierra Johnson, and Maya Ungariano, who also cannot be here tonight. Our lone sophomore, Nyla Smith. And last but not least, our freshies, Elise McMillan and Cameron Stroman. Coaching for my old program has been one of the greatest joys of my life thus far, but coaching these girls this season will have a lasting impact on me for the rest of my life. Congratulations again to the Dream Team, forever FO3. Thank you, guys.
All right, and next up for our recognitions is our Model UN team. coached by retired history teacher extraordinaire, Mr. Richard Burtz. And I assume, Rich, you're going to introduce folks, yes?
Yes, I am, but I'm quiet.
Okay.
This is something people normally see. I'll say a couple things. Good. Thank you for allowing us to be here. This is my 6th year doing Model UN. I got asked to do it during COVID, and which was just a remarkable year for all the wrong reasons. And doing Model UN on Zoom was just overwhelming. And then we got back and we had to rebuild the program. And we have 3 seniors with us today who have seen the program grow from being a 10-person sort of disjointed group that met once a week after school to a group of 45 to 50 kids meet every Monday morning from 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning. And instead of just attending 2 conferences a year, now we attend 6 conferences, and they're going to talk more about that. Probably the best thing about the growth of the group is their ability to take a culture of winning and learning and instill it into all the new people as it goes forward. And you'll see that as they talk. And so I'd like to introduce the people that are here. They have a small slideshow for them to talk about. We have Eleanor Schurtz, Sophia Fitzgerald, Graham Shea, and Ben Boyd.
Let me know when you're ready to go to each slide, okay?
Hello, we are again the OPRF Model United Nations team, and we're just going to give a quick rundown about the program, what we've been doing this year, what we hope to do in the future, and we'll have Graham start it off.
So to start off, MUN is a group where we simulate what the United Nations is like. It's conference based, so we go to these conferences where we represent a country or a person, and we take on all their viewpoints, whoever they are, and we assume who their positions. And so through this, we really get to embody what they represent. We get to learn about different viewpoints, and at these committees, there's many different viewpoints, and it's all about learning how to come together, how to make a solution. Things that really matter in this world when we're so divided.
Next slide, please. Model UN at OPRF meets every Monday morning, which is, I think, a pretty difficult start time, being up every Monday morning before school. But despite that, we still strive to be a welcoming but competitive space. So at OPRF, we really try and make sure that anybody who wants to do Model UN is capable of doing that. At a lot of the high schools that we compete against at these conferences, there's auditions, there's minimum fundraising amounts. So there's a lot of steps that prevent people from being able to do Model UN, even if they're really passionate about it. And so something that we really focus on at OPRF is being able to create a space where everybody is welcome, while also allowing those who really want to pursue Model UN at the highest regards to be able to do that. And we compete at a couple different conferences, and this year we are doing our first ever collegiate level conference, which is really exciting. And it's a really big step up for our program because we've traditionally only done local high school level conferences, and so this will be a good opportunity for those who really want to pursue Model UN or international relations further on after high school to be able to kind of practice that in a more advanced setting. Next slide.
So some current projects and statistics about our team this year. Currently, we are preparing for our next conference, which is Lyman, which is Lyons Township, and that is actually next Saturday, March 7th. We have quite a few people going to that, and we're super excited. It's one of the best conferences we go to each year, so all of us are very excited and looking forward to that. We are also looking to host our first ever mock conference, which is essentially just an actual conference, but that's meant solely for doing practice, and there's gonna potentially be no awards involved. And we are looking to potentially involve Fenwick in this endeavor, since they also have what's considered a smaller Model UN team that's it's on the newer side. And so we're currently in contact with them to see if they'll be able to do it with us. And we're hoping to have 2 or 3 committees that will be chaired by us leaders. So we will all be spending many weekends together in the coming month learning how to be chairs because there's a lot involved with that. And we are looking at potentially doing awards to encourage people to try their absolute hardest, but we're still deciding that. In some statistics, we have seen in the last 4 years a 400% member growth, which I know sounds pretty crazy, but in the 2022 to 2023 school year, we only had 10 consistent members. And this year we're looking at around 40 consistent members, which I think I can speak for myself, Eleanor and Graham, all of us are seniors. I don't think any of us believe that would be possible our freshman year, so it's a huge accomplishment for us. We have also attended a record number of conferences this year with 6 total. And we have also had an insane amount of awards this year. We have had 13 awards, which is more than we have normally had. And of those, we've had 5 Best Delegate Awards, which is first place in committees. And we go against schools like St. Ignatius and Carl Sandburg, who are both internationally recognized and also locally recognized as very competitive teams. So to be able to win first place against their delegates is a huge accomplishment for us. Next slide, please.
So our future goals are obviously to expand more. I know we've expanded a lot, but we're looking to keep that going and to keep getting more and more kids into it. This year we have a lot of freshmen who are incredibly passionate about volleyball. I've never seen a 14-year-old get so into one like I have this year. And obviously, as Sophia explained, we're really hoping to host our own official conference one year, which would be amazing and so fun and just such an experience for everybody involved. And then attend a collegiate level conference, which we're doing this year, and also maybe a travel conference, so which might be in another state. I know some like really fancy schools like the Ignatius do like go to Ireland and do conferences and that kind of thing. We want to continue winning awards. We've had, I think it's this is the year that we've won the most awards, which to me is like coming here as a freshman was like really like I always get a little teary whenever I see somebody win a best delegate. To me, it's a really big deal. And to continue spreading love from all UN. We're putting up posters, we have lots of signage, getting more people. It's a little bit hard to bring people out on a Monday morning at 7:10, especially in the colder months, especially nearing second semester. But we've been succeeding so far, so it's really exciting. Thank you.
Hi. Good evening. February has been a powerful month for our school community centered around culture, representation, service, and celebrating excellence. I'd like to begin with one of our biggest highlights, the Tradition of Excellence Assembly. We honored distinguished OPRF alumni who have gone on to achieve incredible things after graduation. Kate Mazer, a historian, author, and professor at Northwestern University, Stephanie Sparkle Edwards, an R&B singer and activist, and Jordan Higgs, a chef and owner of the Michelin-starred Chicago restaurant Provare, were our honorees this year. During the assembly, my fellow student council officers and I had the opportunity to interview each of the honorees live in front of the entire student body. They spoke about their journeys, the obstacles they've overcome, and how OPRF played a role in shaping who they are today. The student body absolutely loved the assembly, and we heard great feedback. Another major event this month was Black Professionals Day, held on February 17th in the OPRF auditorium. The goal of this event was for all students to engage with dynamic leaders across various industries who share their career paths, challenges, successes, and advice for life after high school. One of the most successful aspects was the opportunity for students to directly interact with alumni and OPRF parents. Seeing professionals who once sat in the same classroom makes future goals feel more tangible. We also improved operations this year. In the past, checking students in at the beginning of the school year, beginning of second period was a challenge. This year, we implemented student ID scanning, which significantly sped up the process and made the transition smooth and efficient. On February 13th, we had Vocal Valentines to celebrate the romantic holiday. Each a cappella group organized their own song, and students can pay to have their loved ones serenaded in class. This continues to be a student favorite, bringing music, positivity, and school spirit into classrooms. Throughout the month, the Office of Equity hosted the African American Film Festival on February 13th, 20th, and 27th. The purpose of the festivals is to showcase films that tell the stories of African Americans who have made significant contributions to this country and to highlight the fight for equality. The goal is to make this history accessible to all students, not just those enrolled in specific courses, because African American history is American history. Organizing the festival is truly a labor of love. Participation can be challenging on Fridays due to sports and other commitments, but even if only one student attends and learns something new, it's a success. Moving forward, stronger promotion, exploring different days or times, possibly connecting screenings to extra credit, and involving parents could help increase engagement. We also celebrated Lunar New Year with the Chinese New Year celebration hosted by Chinese Club and Pals on February 17th. The event featured cultural games like chopstick racing, as well as lion dance performances, music, and student-made stickers for sale. The goal was to highlight Chinese culture and encourage broader student involvement in cultural activities. They sold many goodie bags and saw strong participation through increased advertising and additional support, especially regarding food policies. Could help the event grow even more in the future. On February 24th, the Office of Equity hosted the National African American Parent Involvement Dinner as part of the NAAPID initiative. This event promotes parent engagement, addresses achievement gaps, and strengthens partnerships between families and schools. Ms. Mercedes Freisen served as the keynote speaker, helping to facilitate meaningful dialogue and connecting with our community. Another standout event was Empty Bowls on Friday, February 20th, hosted by the Wheel Throwing Club and the Visual Arts Department. This event raises funds to fight hunger by selling handmade bowls paired with locally donated soup and bread, with proceeds benefiting Housing Forward and Beyond Hunger. This year, they completely ran out of bowls, something that has never happened before, and they also raised a personal best in funds. Finally, this Friday, February 27th, we will host Women in STEM Day. About 90 students will connect with over 30 women professionals across various STEM fields. Students will rotate through small group discussions and workshops, concluding with a keynote speaker and a Q&A in the Little Theater. This event is designed to empower female identifying students interested in STEM by providing representation, mentorship, and real-world insight into possible career pathways. What makes it especially meaningful is that a student committee has been planning it since November, researching professionals, sending invitations, and refining the program based on past feedback. Overall, February has been a month of celebrating excellence, expanding representation, serving our community, and strengthening connections between students, family, alumni, and professionals. Thank you for your continued support of the program that allows students not just to attend OPRF, but to lead, connect, and thrive. Thank you.
We're going to superintendent, so I just want to say that was an excellent. Thank you.
Tough thing to follow.
Yeah. And now for the much inferior. Superintendent's enough. Okay, okay, big congratulations to Jamil Castleberry on winning the boys individual state wrestling championship at 126 pounds. Congrats as well to MJ Rundell and David Undensanya, who earned third place in their respective weight classes, and to AJ Nice, who earned fifth in his class. Additional state qualifiers were Lucas Albrecht, Alex Cohen, Zeb Karansky, and Pierre Nelson. Good luck to the team this weekend as it competes for the dual team state championship tomorrow. Congratulations to the Husky music students who set a school record for state music honors this year. 25 Huskies were selected to perform at the All-State Concerts during the annual Illinois Music Educators Association, ILMEA, conference in Peoria, Illinois. In addition, OPRF's 22-member jazz ensemble earned the prestigious honor of performing as a feature. Congratulations to the following theater department members who were part of the All-State Musical Newsies presented at the 50th Annual Illinois High School Theater Festival. Will Reinhold on drums, Bray Nessania on bass, Jamie Hagee on props, Nina Marie Owens as stage manager, and Michelle Bayer as producer. Kudos to our librarians Amber Hooper and Louise Bergman on OPRF ranking number 4 in Illinois for user engagement with Gale Cengage resources in 2025. This recognition reflects their outstanding work in guiding students to use credible, well-matched sources and develop strong research skills. Congratulations as well to the speech team, who won the regional tournament championship and advanced the sectionals in all 15 events. This was the first time in more than 50 years that OPRF Speech has won the IHSA regional title. The team placed 6th at sectionals with Cody Ingram and Morris Giolani both qualifying for last weekend's state tournament. Kudos to flag football player Eliana Brucato on earning the Chicago Bears Inspire Changemaker Scholarship. The award is based on merit, community service, and a love of the game of flag football. She was honored at a scholarship dinner held at the Bears Hallis Hall in Lake Forest just a few weeks ago. I'm also pleased to announce that OPRF earned the 3rd spot in ComEd's Public Sector Energy Team of the Year competition, with the Village of Oak Park earning the top award. This award is part of ComEd's Strategic Energy Management Program, which encourages behavioral and operational changes that lead to long-lasting energy savings without significant capital investments. In 1 year, the district saved more than $20,000 by strategically reducing its energy consumption. And finally, I have some late-breaking news to share. In collaboration with our county clerk's office, History Division Head Amy Hill organized an early voting event at our school that took place today for faculty, staff, and students. We had over 200 participants, the majority of whom were students and first-time voters. Congratulations to those students and our History Division for continuing to find real ways to make civic engagement an important part of the student experience at OPRF. And that concludes the superintendent announcements.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. And Ms. Evans, FOIA status?
8 submitted, 7 resolved.
Great. We will now move to our February recognition. And I want to kick off for this school year and this month, start with congratulating Mr. Patrick Pearson, music teacher, who was selected as Teacher of the Month. And here are some of the highlights from the nominations received for Patrick. Patrick is a positive, friendly orchestra leader and skilled musician. His humor makes class fun and students love learning with him. He encourages growth and is enjoyable to be around. And as the mom of a former band student, I can definitely compliment and agree with that. Mr. Pearson is fantastic. I don't know, is he here today?
No, it's not. Had another engagement.
An engagement. So congratulations, Patrick, and we will get you your award. So.
Okay, and now we would like to extend congratulations to our Employee of the Month, Marianne Arena, Educational Technology Administration Assistant. Here,
That's one of my admin assistants. Yeah.
here are some of the highlights from the nominations received for Marianne. Marianne is a dedicated educational technology team member who goes above and beyond with detail, reliability, and positivity. She supports others through change, improves navigation, and remains a steady, selfless anchor. Congratulations again, Marianne. Are you
Not here. Another engagement.
We would also like to extend congratulations to our Volunteer of the Month, Mary Byer, Boys Swim Team. Here are some of the highlights from the nominations received for Mary. Mary has led the Boys Swim parent group for 4 years, organizing more than 80 families, attending every meet, supporting coaches, and bringing constant positivity. Her leadership helped make this swim season a success. Congratulations, Mary. And is Mary with us?
Nope.
Another engagement?
Not again.
Okay. Congratulations, Mary.
Congratulations to all our winners. Although they cannot be here with us tonight, we hope they'll have a chance to look and hear how they were recognized. Ms. Evans, any public comments?
We have 2 for tonight in person.
And for public comments, please limit comments to matters within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education to 3 minutes. And please remember that this is not intended to be a dialogue with the Board of Education. And response time to any questions will be up to 2 weeks. And who do we have first, Ms. Evans?
Okay. Our first speaker tonight, and please excuse me if I mispronounce your name, Gianluca Macaferi. Hello, it's good. Go ahead, baby, up at the podium. And are you guys speaking together?
Yeah.
Okay, and the second young man is Ray. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce your last name. Could you pronounce it?
Byron.
Thank you.
I am Gianluca, and this is Ray, and we are both members of the OPRF Students Council, and a coalition that reflects the racial and socioeconomic diversity of our student body, along with representatives of the OPRF High School Mutual Aid. Recently met with Dr. Johnson, board members, and administration to discuss our proposal and end foods insecurity at OPRF. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet and share our ideas with these district leaders. During that meeting, we shared data and lived experiences that highlight a painful reality. Hunger at OPRF is often hidden behind a veil of stigma. In a community like ours, there can be a lot of shame involved in admitting you don't have enough to eat. This shame creates a barrier that prevents students from asking for help, even when they are struggling to focus in class.
During that meeting, our immediate priority for phase one is establishing universal, stigma-free access to snacks. By making this resource available to all, we remove the shame factor that often prevents students in need from seeking help. We are at a critical juncture. As the admin told us in our meeting, the budget cycle is fast approaching. Beyond Hunger is interested in helping us, but are awaiting a formal go-ahead from the district before they can commit to any resources. We are ready to collaborate to ensure this becomes a reality. We ask the district, what next steps can we take to achieve our goal of introducing universal snacks by April 1st and ensure planning and funding for the 2026-2027 school year?
Thank you.
Thank you both.
And that concludes tonight's public comments.
Forgetting my microphone tonight. Okay, we will now move on to our consent items. And are there any items that board members would like to pull to discuss?
I would like to pull item, I think it's item I, policies for second read in the next one.
Okay, great. We will pull item I, and I move to approve the consent items as follows. A, approval of open and closed meeting minutes for January 29th, 2026, and February 12th, 2026, and a declaration that the audio tapes of the closed session minutes of April 2024 be destroyed. B, approval of the personnel recommendations, including new hires, resignations, leave of absence, and end of assignments. C, approval of the contract with Lauterbach and Amen to perform audit services for the fiscal years ending June 30th, 2026 and 2027, at a total cost of $85,500 over the 2-year period. D, approval of Justin's yearbook contract for fiscal year 2026 through 2028. E, approval of the resolution directing the transfer of funds from the Education Fund to Capital Projects Fund and the resolution abating the working cash fund. F, approval to adopt the updated Community Finance Committee charter. G, to review and approve the 2025-2026 expenditure of $218,291.50 for the refresh of 175 Lenovo ThinkBook faculty and staff computers. And H, approval of the Search Institute service contract for $38,000.
Let's do that song.
Yeah. J, skipping I, going to J, approval of the December 2025 treasurer's report as presented. K, approval of the December 2025 finance report as presented. And L, approval of the January 2026 and February 2026 check disbursements and financial resolutions, including the payroll resolutions for March 2026. May I have a second? Okay. Please call the roll.
Mr. Grindhouse?
Yes.
Mr. Hertz?
Yes.
Dr. Livingston?
Yes.
Dr. Odell?
Yeah.
Mr. Brisbane?
Yes.
Mr. Arkin?
Yes.
And Ms. Williams?
Yes. And now we'll move to action items, and let us start with discussion for item I that we pulled, regarding, board policies for second read and action. And we'll open for discussion.
So should I kick it off with my,
Yes.
so I had follow-up questions, on a few sections of the suggested policy updates. The first one is policy 2150, which is about the board committees. And the question was, when we had the conversation last time, I think we had talked about the policy committee and whether our policy committee is a board committee, and if so, could it be included here? And I didn't see any changes reflected.
Yeah, so, I may have missed the reference to that being a board committee during the, I'm assuming at that last meeting. Policy committee is not a board level committee because it doesn't rely and require meeting acts requirements for all of them.
Okay.
Board committees require such, processes, and superintendent committees do not. But they both, right, of course, have to follow the OMA requirement for no more than 2 board members, right, to be in attendance. And so that's why you don't see this.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Next,
I'm sorry, can I get one thing though, just for the rest of the board to that, since we brought it up? In 250, you do see language that changes, or just better organizes the information for the 2 standing committees that fall under what, the CCD.
Yeah, I want to thank you for doing that because it makes it much better.
Great.
okay, then the next section I'd like to raise is 660, which is curriculum content. And there were a few sections of 660 where I had concerns. The first is section 4. And in section 4, if I'm reading correctly, this removes after 26, 27, the curriculum containing a unit on age-appropriate internet safety. So I wanted to confirm the recommendation here is after 26, 27, we will no longer be teaching internet-appropriate curriculum, age-appropriate internet safety.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That is what this says. We do not have any designs. This is gonna be similar to, I think, some of the other questions you're gonna have.
Yeah.
We do not have any designs or plans or anything like that to change our curriculum as a result of this. Many of these are the results of changes in state law that have shifted some curriculum elsewhere, or the state is really focused through, the board might remember we had a discussion, they sent a resolution a while back regarding Vision 2030 for at the state level. And as part of that vision, there's a press to simplify what is an incredibly large school code in the state of Illinois. And so you see some of the whittling of some language that they have deemed to have kind of no teeth or no real accountability mechanisms in place, just to kind of simplify what's in that code. I don't have, with the others, I have a little more specific information. With this one, I don't have like historical information for where that part is gone. But we do not have, and we have not had any conversations internally about shifting our curriculum from the session. Do you have more you want to share, Dr. Esther?
I just, on the internet safety.
Yeah.
So my understanding of the shift with internet safety, so that's been that was enacted quite some time ago, and since then there's been legislation on media literacy and computer literacy. But specifically under the media literacy, it actually includes teaching about the harmful physical, emotional, and physical effects associated with unhealthy use of internet and social media. So you've got in that media literacy anything that teaches students about sources and anything that would be in that research realm. But then it also includes, media beyond, I would say, just the internet. So if you think about social media and those things as well.
So is that in 660 somewhere else? The media literacy content? Like, would we find that somewhere else? It's in. All right. Okay, and then the other two questions, well, okay, then number 6, is the character education component? And I guess before I ask the question, let me just ask a more general question, which is, I understand that the recommended changes from Press Plus are based on changes in the state code.
Correct.
But to what extent do we have the ability to, or the appetite to have policies for our district, which may differ from the recommended policies based on the state code? If they're, obviously we have to adhere to state code, but we can go beyond if we choose.
2 questions. Appetite is for the board, not me.
Yeah.
The ability is there, of course. And this absolutely, 6, I was able to dive into this, and this falls into that category I described earlier. They're reeling away language in this that is, just large, and there for a long time. It's no license, so it's in there. What we do as a school district with our wellness program, what we do is in some places in our setback and self-defense classes, and our health curriculum. Even some conversations we're talking about wellness in a broader sense in our district definitely dip into the language that's here. So I don't know that we see that this language is really problematic for us as a school district. But any chance you can kind of simplify policy is useful. Jen, we haven't discussed this thoroughly as a team, so I'm interested in your insight as well.
So I'm trying to think of, I think it came with one of the state superintendent's updates. They had given us a long list of guidance, and it's exactly what Dr. Johnson said. Many of the things are reorganized versus reorganized or pulled into something else, included with something else versus completely removed from school code.
Trying to simplify.
So, okay, so I understand that. So just to be clear, as we're voting on this, what's stricken out here is in all grades, from here is what's removed. Character education must be taught, including respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, trustworthiness, and citizenship in order to raise students' honesty, kindness, justice, discipline, respect for others, and moral courage. And then it goes on to talk about also including instruction on behaviors that violate board policy, which remains, that part is not stricken out. So this caught my attention, and I think it's worth discussing only because it's seeing, redlined and crossed out all of that language about justice, kindness, moral courage, etc., as being included in our district curriculum by policy. I feel uncomfortable with removing all of that language, even though I understand it's that, we still would have, of course, we could continue to include those pieces of instruction in our curriculum, even though we likely would continue to do so. Having that articulated in the policy gives me some comfort. So that was my concern about number 6.
And just to think to number 6, hopefully many of those things with updated research would be addressed with our work with the developmental relationships as well across the entire school system. So if you've got fairness, caring, trustworthiness, those types of things would be found within the elements of the framework.
I'm not familiar with what you're referencing.
So for the Search Institute contract, where the real purpose of that is to work with the developmental relationships framework to impact really our entire system. So while that's not policy, that's a practice. I think that's, evidence for us that, those things in number 6 are very important to us moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I would see like everything you just described as being the way we're currently adhering to this policy in number 6.
Yeah, that's right.
And the concern would be, you know, that there would no longer be, unless it's somewhere else, you know, in the rewritten code, would not be required anymore by policy. So it would still be a practice, but there wouldn't be a policy underlying that, if I'm understanding correctly.
I hear that point. I just want to clarify one thing. It just, the fact, be honest, it's not trying to push one way or the other on it, but the note that we have here is Press Plus 4. Notes that Public Act 104-391 repealed the requirement in the state for this language. So this isn't just kind of a whim, right? That the state will put you out. There's a public act that no longer is that needs to go.
And so Kathleen, I don't know, but you're asking with respect to this, is something you'd like to see continue?
Yeah, my suggestion would be that we not accept the changes suggested in number 6. Especially given the administration's perspective that those things are valued, appreciated, and already included and would continue to be included in the curriculum. So it seems like there wouldn't be any real burden to the school or the administration for leaving it in.
I am, we do have a policy tomorrow. I wouldn't be opposed to, and Dr. Johnson appreciated looking at what this is possible. I wouldn't be opposed to presenting the best changes absent that stricken provision to be adopted at the next board meeting, and we can, solidify that as well as the additional changes in tomorrow's meeting. Tim, would you?
Just to clarify, your suggestion would pull 660 from tonight's vote, and we try to address that tomorrow.
We can, well, I guess the question is, can we pull it, or would we vote against it and then present it again for adoption at the next board meeting?
It's the best process here.
It's on the agenda. Can we pull it at this point?
Yeah, no.
We can't.
So I think
Could we have
a
modified action of approving, with the exception of 6.6 to be reviewed later. That's what
I mean, we table action in 660.
Yeah, to actually, could we approve it taking out 660?
Yes.
Yeah, you can.
To do a modified action.
without the true text being presented.
Just pull up those sections.
Just put it entire, just 660 policy and approve by the other.
Which means you would approve the motion as amended.
As amended, right.
As discussed here, and that amendment would exclude 660.
And then that can be brought back. We should be able to do that.
Yeah, that would. I would be happy to so move that in just a moment. I have one more thing in 660.
Yeah, can I stay with this one just for a moment, Catherine? Is that okay?
Of course.
The language in this, and we would discuss this tomorrow, but since the whole board is here, the language that's in this specifically references the phrase character education, and it defines that. In many ways, it's a very dated phrase. And so my recommendation for the board would be to approve this with this language struck, right? I mean, if that were where we wanted to go. Otherwise, the alternative path, I would recommend that we create completely different language, not just go back to this old language and figure out how to go from there. This language is just referencing a type of curriculum and approach to character that is not done in public schools anymore. Yeah. Okay, so this isn't a matter of just our team meeting tomorrow and say, hey, let's put the language back in. I don't think that's right. Okay.
So are you suggesting that we would in the future see a new revised 660 that would both remove this dated language and include refreshed appropriate language that would have the spirit?
I guess for sake of kind of just getting the other stuff in 660 done, if there aren't objections, I would ask the board to approve this with it edited out, understanding that you have a commitment right now, our advocacy and policy committee, to discuss this and consider if we want to adopt and craft different language to bring back at a future date. That will just be another addition another change to 660.
Okay. And I would, if we vote on that, I'll vote no. But-
Okay.
My other concern is 660 is number 7. Item E at the bottom, again, that's voting instruction. I don't think this is the right time for us to be removing policy that supports instruction on the voting process. I would prefer to see that left.
Yeah, that has changed because the state requirement has moved that to the middle school years.
Yeah.
But know that, with our civics class, and actually one of the announcements I made, during the superintendent's announcement earlier today, this is a big part of how we function as a school district right now. And so keeping that in, I don't have any objection to that at all. Although again, Jen, you have anything to add to that?
Definitely not.
Yeah, so keeping that way.
So 660.7, we would leave with only the addition of the word and. All right, and then that's the second, there are 2 instances of the striking of instruction around voting, so that was the first one. The second is in 6300, which we discussed last time, which is also here for a vote. Let me scroll down. Find it. So 6300, number 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also strikes out methods of voting and the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm not as concerned about the Pledge of Allegiance, but again, wouldn't be able to support this change with the removal of voting instructions in policy. And again, I understand we would, everyone, loves, believes in democracy, and we would continue to include that in the curriculum, but I really think it's valuable to have it outlined and to be in our policy. So that concludes my comments and concerns regarding the suggested policy language.
So then, I think given the number of concerns within 660, I think I would argue that it is appropriate to pull all of 660 and we'll bring 660 back with the policy. So I would be okay with that if everyone else would. I mean, because it's hard to say, okay, 660 subsection.
Yeah,
But not 3 as an amendment. I'm okay with leaving 660 as is. Subject as in, but moving as amended to pass everything else, but the amendment was 660, and then we bring that back next time around.
How's everyone else with that? Within the motion to approve the policy for second read, with the establishment of 660, which will be reviewed and fall back to the board.
And leaving alone 6300 with it where it's removed as a graduation requirement. With methods of voting, the examination on patriotism. Well, we still have the examination on patriotism and principles of representative government, but strike out methods of voting as part of that examination. This is suggested to change it 6300.
So you want to leave it as a no last right?
I want to leave it in. Yeah, correct.
Who's going back to that piece? Okay.
I know, it's a long talking.
It's a lot. I think we're both 660 and 6300.
That's really the only substantive change in 6300. So if we could pull that as well for just review and a more formal recommendation from the policy committee, potentially review it again.
Okay, I get it. Any other discussion or Graham?
But just from a big picture standpoint, is it correct that references to curriculum that appear in policy are largely driven by legislation that gets passed and the legislature says you shall teach this?
Almost exclusive.
Okay. Meanwhile, there's an entire universe of curriculum content or pieces that stand outside what the legislature mandates. Correct. But sometimes got this circle here, they've got this circle over here, and sometimes the circles overlap. Meaning, a reference to, we're gonna teach you voting might appear in the legislation. We may be teaching it anyway, so if at some point reference to voting gets stricken from legislation and then expressed and translated to our policy, it doesn't mean that we're necessarily subtracting that curriculum from what we teach.
Correct. And in this case, that's particularly correct because we have already approved our civics curriculum as part of our requirements for graduation, in which that is a critical component.
Okay. So if we accede to a deletion of curriculum and policy, it doesn't automatically mean we're subtracting it from the actual curriculum that our students receive. Let me finish. A desire to keep it in policy then is more of a statement of reinforcing what's important to us or our values, or doubly making sure that our kids will receive educational content that we think is important.
I think it's fair to see it that way.
Yeah.
It's a values proposition in that case.
Well, I think it provides security, right? Because curriculum can change. Like the curriculum can't violate policy. And so while the curriculum today happens to include it, there's nothing stopping it from being excluded next year absent the policy. So it's not just a statement of values, it's a security measure as well.
In some cases, you may be correct. In other cases, you wouldn't be correct. It depends on exactly what the curriculum content or whatever the key question is. In this case, because the board has approved civics, right, as a standalone graduation requirement, and it's covered in that, we're double covered for that. Does that make sense?
But civics doesn't necessarily include Pledge of Allegiance, for example.
That's true. It does not. That was the employees.
Yeah, I think that's, the question for that's already be.
That's
perfect.
So I mean, right, so there are elements that could be right.
Anyone else?
This, I guess, a question for Kathleen. So the policy committee tomorrow, is there any guidance that you, or any preference that you want to state for that committee to account? Or would you, or do you want the language to stay as it is?
Not necessarily. I would say, so there are several different points. I think on the point of internet safety, Dr. Hester clarified that that's rewritten in 17, and so I'm satisfied on that point. No change required. On the point of the character education, I think to Dr. Johnson's point, that I agree that that's dated language and seems old-fashioned, but I think the content is valuable. So I appreciated the suggestion that we might consider a rewritten description of how we might continue to include moral courage and justice and kindness and fairness as curricular aspects required by policy. And on the subject of voting, I just don't think I will ever feel comfortable striking instruction and education around voting as a formally articulated curricular element in our board policy. I think it's valuable to have it there. So that would be my guidance to the policy committee.
Thank you, Kathleen. And so we are going to do an amended motion to approve the following board policies for second read and action, and there are quite a few of them, so bear with me. 2.120 board member development, 2.150 committees, 2.270 discrimination and harassment on the basis of race, color, and national origin prohibited, 4.10 fiscal and business management, 4.30 revenue and investments, 4.80 accounting and audits, 4.140 waiver of student fees, 4.190 targeted school violence prevention program, 5.10 equal employment opportunity and minority recruitment, 5.90, abused and neglected child reporting. 5.100, staff development programs. 5.190, teacher qualifications. 5.200, substitute teachers. 5.280, duties and qualifications. 5.300, schedules and employment year. 6.20, school year calendar and day. 6.40, curriculum development. 6.160, English learners. 6.260, complaints about curriculum, instructional materials and programs. 6.280, grading and promotions. 6.310, high school credit for non-district experience, course substitutions, re-entering students. 6.315, high school credit for students in grade 7 or 8. 6.320, high school proficiency. 7.10, equal educational opportunities. 7.70, attendance and truancy. 7.150, agency and law enforcement requests. 7.180, prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment. 7.190, student behavior. 7.290, suicide and depression awareness and prevention. 7.325, restriction of publications, high schools. 7.340, student records. 8.20, community use of school facilities. And 8.30, visitors to and conduct on school properties, with 6.60, curriculum content and 6.300, graduation requirements being pulled to be reviewed by the policy committee and resubmitted. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? I'm sorry, please call roll. Thank you, Lisa, efficient.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Dr. Livingston,
Yes.
Mr. Brisbane,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Dr. Odell,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
and Ms. Williams.
Yes. And thank you for the discussion. It's important that we understand this. Okay, appreciate that. And now, so excited to move that we accept a donation of $1 million from the OPR High School Imagine Foundation to reimburse expenses for Project 2 as presented. May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
No one wants to like say no.
So welcome to have.
Good evening. Nice to be here with all of you this evening and to present you with $1 million. It was great to see, great. I'm Laura Maycroft. I'm the president of the OPRF Imagine Foundation, raising millions of dollars to support this fabulous school. And it was great to see the students presenting earlier today. Just reinforces our love and commitment to this institution and our passion for continuing our efforts to raise money to keep the bar high here in OPR. So I'm here to present. Who do I present to?
Well, it's all race up there.
Should I vote first?
I'm walking up, Mr. Gunn.
Wait,
Yes.
hold on, wait, excuse me.
We should vote.
I have to vote.
Okay.
All in favor of accepting one another?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Dr. Livingston, Dr. Odell,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brisbane,
Yes.
and Ms. Williams.
Of course, yes.
All right. Yeah.
Those are so expensive. They're very expensive.
They can bring the same one each time.
Yeah, they can.
Dry erase board?
Actually, you could do a post-it and then place it on poster board and just bring it. SRC, yeah. They can. I just need to grab my tools and
And we have, Our last action, item is to approve the gift naming agreements as presented. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion or questions? And hearing none, Ms. Evans, please call the roll.
Dr. Livingston,
Yes.
Mr. Brisbane,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Dr. O'Gill,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
and Ms. Williams.
Yes. Thank you all, and another, again, a big thank you to, our partners and friends at the Magic Foundation for their support of the high school and the project too. Next up, is our discussion for evidence, based funding reports. Robert, yes, join us.
Mr. Robert Jackson is coming forward to share our evidence-based funding gap analysis. And this is something we bring every year as we prepare for some staffing season, which we will be presenting for discussion 2 weeks from today. So, Tony, I'll turn this over to you.
So Emma joining us online as well.
Yes. Yep, we annually bring this forward for the Board of Education to review the EBF gap analysis spreadsheet that was attached to the memo. This year, the Community Finance Committee has really leaned into this EBF formula and the adequacy gap analysis that goes with it. For anybody that's not familiar, the evidence-based funding formula gives us adequacy percentage for revenue. This year we have, based on a couple changes they made to their calculation, we are at 117% of adequacy, down from the 140s the year before. We say a tier 4 district, which means that we get a small fraction of any new dollars that come in, while tier 1 districts that have the most identified need by the state receive the majority of the influx of new dollars. This spreadsheet's put together by the state as a tool for us to then fill in to see where our spending could align with the formula for evidence-based funding. It's a good way to look at how your expenses line up with the revenues that are provided. We have a new member this year on our CFC who was part of the team that really developed out the EBF model for the state, and she leaned in strongly. There's a subcommittee with her and another member that has been developed as well on the EBF model to help us align some of the positions we have here in the district, not just to the definition that comes from the state, but the intent of the role in the funding formula. We tried to spell out a lot of those changes in the memo for the board. Other than moving positions around, and one significant change you'll see in cost in the gap analysis is in instructional materials. That is an area that tends to be cyclical. Some years will be heavier in curriculum purchases than others. So it is not that we have, purposely chose to save $1 million in instructional materials. It was just an off-cycle year for bookstore expenses. I anticipate this one at this point next year, we would look at it and say, okay, this is now increased a certain dollar amount as well. Brian, I'm not sure if you have anything else you want to add, or we can go to questions.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add is, the district has been preparing this tool for a few years now, and with the change in not only personnel that work on the report, but also, outsiders that are involved, whether it be members of the CFC or the board or whatever, there were occasionally inconsistencies in where people would get categorized, only because there's not always a clear fit answer for how a specific staff person fits into this model. Oftentimes, a staff person could, realistically be categorized in 2 or 3 of the different categories. So I think one thing that this work really did for us this year in having not only multiple sets of eyes on it, but then kind of discussing it back and forth over the course of several months, is we were able to document some of the rationale for why people were categorized where they were this year, and that should greatly help in years going forward with the consistency aspect of preparing this document, and also kind of have that justification available to, next year when this time rolls around and we're saying, now, why did we put this person in as an instructional facilitator or whatever the category may be? We have that already documented that we can lean back on and understand why we made that decision.
To give you one example, and it'd be hard to go through every single example. We have a lot of employees here at the district, but we looked at our special education teachers over at our site program, and they have historically lived within the special education classification on this sheet. But in talking with the CFC, the recommendation was actually to move them into the category of low-income pupil support, because although the title of that category is low-income pupil support, the intention is pupil support across the district. And as they site works directly with our population of 18 to 22-year-olds, they're providing a level of service that differs from a traditional special education teacher in the K-12 environment. I think even as we, as a district, started to meet to, go through rationale of some of the changes, what we found is there's a lot of positions that really, by definition, can live in 2 to 3 different categories. I think next year, one thing that will be interesting as we bring this forward, right now, I would say we are one of a smaller number of districts that have leaned into this tool. It will be a requirement going forward for all districts to complete this. The first year, you require everybody to do something. I think what we'll find is there's a lot of different methodology that goes into it. But over time, the picture should become clearer. And my hope is that, between that process and some outside advocacy, we can also get some clearer definitions from the state on, really where we need to be categorizing some of these roles that really could fit in 2 or 3 different buckets.
Explain the per student investments a little better. I mean, I'm looking at the gifted per student investments and showing 0%, and then you're $300,000 short of what was targeted.
Yes, and I may lean on Dr. Johnson to help me a little bit of rationale here, but we don't have a traditional gifted program at our school, so therefore we don't have money that we put into it. We have a different model here.
Yeah, anyway, the gifted model is something that would work for non-high schools, really. It just doesn't apply. That's part of what we do with EDF. EDF is just, it's just one model that works. It's designed to function reasonably well K-12, but it just doesn't work perfectly for any individual.
So maybe building on that, what you said just previously, we are stuck with the labels as they exist today under the EDF. And hence, you explained a rationale for categorizing under low-income pupil supports a lot of different support roles that may or may not be devoted to low income per se. So we're just gonna have to keep in mind that going forward, when we see that label, we know that that's simply a broader category for us.
Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna ask either Tony or Greg if you can talk us through just a little bit how, so Greg, you said in a couple of weeks that you'd be bringing staffing recommendations to your committee. So can you just sort of talk us through I guess whether there's anything you see here that might inform those recommendations, and or how do you use the findings from the EBF to inform those recommendations?
Yeah, so there are some investments that are listed here that are, well, first of all, there's a long-term look, right? So we might see some investments that we might want to lean into. I'll give you one example. In conversations with Dr. Hester this school year, we have considered, a different model from what we've had here historically for the instructional coaches. It's valued in the ABF model for a reason. There's a good research base behind it. The program, what we had before, didn't work, right? The way we really wanted it to be this year, but that doesn't mean that is forever something we will not be investing in here. So I'll tell you one really kind of leaning forward here. We will almost certainly be noting in that memo in 2 weeks that we plan to come back in another year with a more robust and complete approach to instructional coaching. That's one example. There could be others across the board. There are other things to be aware of as you look at this. You'll note that I think it is there are things we don't want to touch, even though they look weird. One example is the principal, right? The ratio there was 1 for 600 students. We're well under that, because you got to factor in all the other ways we do that type of work here in the school, which is why we moved division heads. Tony referenced that in the memo. They had previously been in, I think, that instructional coach category, the instructional specialist, but we moved that over to assistant principal because they're really evaluating teachers, which is a role that in smaller districts, different districts, is done by an assistant principal. So you really have to consider some of those administrative positions in a whole to understand them. But anyway, the instructional coaching is one such example.
And I think to provide an example on the kind of the outside of the, or kind of the opposite end of that is when we look at, I don't know the exact definition that they use here, but when we look at the investments in supervisory aides, we are higher with our in-house security team than what is recommended. But we also have a high school campus that is significantly larger than many of the other high schools in the state. So that's where we have to lean into, other thoughts of not just a body of a security personnel to the number of students, but what is our square footage? And our building stays open much longer. It is much more accessible than most high schools in the state of Illinois. So that has additional requirements. Same would fall with buildings and grounds. There's just more building for B&G to cover and more of a need than a 2-story high school in the suburbs that maybe only has 500 less kids, but on a sheer square footage, doesn't compare to us.
So is it fair to say that you would, in the sort of process of reacting to this, you would look through and where you see real outliers, like the supervisory aides that you just mentioned, being at 229% of adequacy, that would cause you to pause, but not necessarily to make a change. Just think through why is that, and is that aligned with
yes,
our particular needs? Okay, thank you.
And even as well, and this is it's always an interesting conversation every year, because this comes a meeting or two before the staffing recommendations. But as the administrative team meets to discuss all potential staffing changes, I would like to give that entire team a lot of credit, because for every single position that was brought up, we looked at the CFC findings and recommendations in terms of where does the CFC see that in as a priority or compared to the EBF model. So the EBF model was considered both in the 1 year and then long-term planning.
Yeah.
So should we think of this as like the beginning of the budget process? Is this the first, or do you see this as separate from our own internal budget process?
I'd love to hear Brian's opinion on this as well. I think it's the kickoff to both the budget and the staffing process. Obviously, staffing plays a major role in our annual budget. But this having the work that goes into this, it does, give us that lens of, and especially as we look to find efficiencies within our budget, where are areas that, we may be putting too many dollars in, where areas that, as we talked about with some of the other categories, that maybe we are overfunding, but there's for a specific reason. But it just helps. It helps put everything in a little bit clearer of a focus before we continue to narrow that down in the budgeting process. And I think the same would be true with staffing.
Can you just lay out for us what happens from this point forward throughout the rest of the year on both the staffing process and the budget process?
Sure. On the staffing process, in March, Dr. Sanders will come forward with any proposed additions or changes for staffing, and present that with reasoning or thought to it to the Board of Education. That has been not solely influenced by this document, but is definitely a tool in the tool belt that was used. And then in the budgeting process, what happens is the board authorizes the business office to start the budgeting process. We then work with all the individual departments and divisions to go through, and it's called zero-based budgeting. Here is your budget last year, but what do you need next year? And start to build that budget from the ground up, looking at last year's budget and any planned expenses or reductions that are known. We start to have meetings on that and drill that down. It's then we compile it and say, okay, how does this look compared to the projections? If we're significantly under, there's a good chance something was either left out or missed, or we may find that a big planned expense, a department or a division said, no, we're actually not going to do that this year. And then we refine that ultimately to our tentative budget, bring it to the board. That gets discussed, and it's then tightened down even more and brought forward for the final budget in the fall.
So the next touch point with the board is that tentative budget and then final budget.
We do, and it's not required, but there is a preliminary budget step that is done kind of before the tentative. And so it's almost like a tentative budget, where we get to the point where we feel like we're confident in an idea where we will be. That also gives us the ability to come and ask for spending authorizations over the summer before we have a formal approved budget.
And then our healthcare spend, that's on a parallel track.
Yes, because that calendar runs different than that calendar runs January to January. Our fiscal year is July to June. So when we build our budget, it is half of it is a known expense, and then half is what we have built into the projections based on the most recent data that we have when we get to the final budget.
Okay, and so the healthcare process, when does that begin? We have our outside consultant helping us understand what the market is.
We're really, I'd say we're in that right now. We're having meetings to find out where we are trending compared to where we were trending last year. In those meetings, sometimes it's purely a look at, where our monthly claims are compared to a year ago and compared to what we projected them to be. Other times in those meetings, we also talk about shifts in market trends and what we're seeing. So the health insurance really kind of like the budgeting process, it never ends. We go through it and then we start to watch it and analyze it right away.
I would say we start getting our first preliminary estimates on the health insurance around June or so. And then by August, we've got a little bit of a firmer estimate when it's time to kind of put together the tentative version of the budget and the final version of the budget. And then, by that point, with the budget being set, we've got a nice target, so that we know we don't want to exceed this percentage increase or whatever with the healthcare. Are there other changes we need to be looking at accordingly based on our claims experience? And then, I think it's October that the final renewal comes forward to the board for approval.
Thanks, Brian, that's helpful.
Seeing that there were adjustments in categories and positions that shifted from one category to another. And there are definitely some outliers on either end. And having a closer, more intimate understanding of the explanations behind some of those outliers. Looking at the EBF model, where do you see actual, very much actionable outliers in our data? Where the 300% of target is actually doesn't have a good explanation for it.
I'm trying to think how to answer that question. I think some of those answers will come forward next month with staffing, and it would just be premature to point those out at this point. I think what really comes into focus on areas that we look at spend. There's it's so hard to. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, so to say, with the staffing presentation that comes forward in a couple weeks here. But I think you'll see some alignment when that comes forward.
The questions?
Do we have our EBF broken? Do we have our financial peer districts EBF broken out by subcategory as well?
No.
We will have that for the first time, I think, a year from now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's required to be done right now, but it has been required in the past with previous boards several years back. OPRF was way ahead of the curve on this one. So, particularly on this. And I just want to point out, again, underscore a really critical point. Once we even have them next year, it's going to be really hard to do apples to apples comparisons between school districts. On one hand, we can whittle it down with some reason and say, okay, these are high school only one building districts or two building, but 9 to 12 districts. That'll help us a little bit. But how those districts function and what their buildings are like and all that have huge influences on how the EBF maps out. And then the individual choices they make behind the scenes for how to allocate their staff, the judgment calls that kind of Tony was talking about, when you have somebody who really is in two different buckets, is going to make it really hard to really zero in on their high level of precision. It really should be used to make a good overall understanding of where your kind of values are as a school district and help you identify areas that you want to move forward. The more precise you get it, especially with comparisons, I think the more you run the risk of making some mistakes. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, because when I look at this list that's in here of our peers, it's very difficult to compare, because almost every one of these are two campuses, at least. You look at Hinsdale, Downers Grove, Lake Park, Lions, all have two campuses. Riverside, Brookfield may have one, but it's a much smaller school than we have. So I understand it. So first of all, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank everybody for doing this work, because this is, I think, something we've been looking for a very long time, to actually kind of reconcile where we're at versus what the state gives us. And that's the only way I think that we can move forward. And I think what I would be looking for as we move forward in with staffing and budgeting is a clear rationale as to why we would be where we are in terms of adequacy in the different, items. Okay, so that if we are above adequacy in a certain area, there's a good rationale for being it. For example, safety and security. We have a 1 million square foot building, all right, which is 60% larger than most, whatever it might be. But as long as we have that clear rationale, I think is important. I think that's when you start to identify where we'll be able to, to slow growth or to cut expenditures.
Thanks.
Isabel, I'll pick on you, but any questions?
I don't like reading it. I just actually have a question. Actually, I was just looking. It might be silly. Because I'm looking at the ratio: 1,000 students, 1 psychologist, and then the budgeted expenditure is higher than what it is for some other ones, like like the English learner core teacher PK12. Actually, I guess I don't know if that's normal because like also the ratio of 100 students for 1 English core teacher. I don't know if it's they're getting paid more than the ratios. So I don't know if that's normal, but honestly, yeah, just that's my question.
That psychologist one is a good way to kind of explain this. Let me do that. I'm glad you brought that up because it helps it doesn't provide a scope of answers that Arthur was talking about a second ago, but it helps to illustrate kind of how the question is taken is. So take a look at that. EDF model says for every 1,000 students, you want 1 psychologist in your building. We have over 3,300 students. It says we should have 3.3 psychologists. We have 5. Why do we have 5? We have 5 because we have 5 PSS teams. Our students are broken up into those teams. Those teams work as kind of collaborative problem solving and teams for students who are needing support. And so the psychologists help to make each of those teams kind of complete and functional. And so we added a psychologist 2 years ago, I think, for that purpose. So that doesn't fall into that kind of 200 plus, 300 plus category that we heard referenced before, but the rationale is that's how our system is designed, within that school, and that's a value we have to make sure we provide that level of support.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Dr. Johnson, couldn't you say why not have 4 PSS teams?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the reason that we have 5 goes back as to historical decisions that we've made in the past. So that's right. So the rationale I gave is just kind of a quick explanation. Now, why do we have 5 and why is the structure set up? I just described is obviously much more answer. That's right. And that would have to go into, for example, what is it? IAFTA is the counseling organization, the Illinois Association of School Counselors. They have ratios that they recommend for caseloads for counselors. That was part of the rationale for giving us.
And that rationale for caseload is not considered when we talk about the recommended ratio for.
In this case, we're talking about, so I don't know, I'd have to go into the EVF model and really understand how that formula works for counselors. What I'm trying to do right now is just kind of. I'm trying to, presumably there would be articulation, right? Your question makes sense in that, but, anyway.
I'm trying to figure out what kind of weight to attribute to this and develop context around it. Obviously, right, you can explain outliers or discrepancies. There are going to be some that very well may be issues, to Fred's point, that we need to address and we need to tackle. And trying to identify those and the reason behind it, I think is going to be important.
Yeah, I just want to point one thing out. This goes back 10 years. That there was in terms of the PSS teams.
Yeah.
Going back to 2015, there was a conscious decision made by the board at that time, all right, to add a team to add to create more capacity than the state told us that was needed at the time. All right, and that was actually from the board's perspective, that was a value decision. Of more community values that we felt, or I was not on the board, but when they did it, it was more of, this is the right thing to do, this is what our students need. It might not fit into the correct percentage and numbers of each of the team members, and I think it was something like 250 students per PSS team or something like that. I don't remember the exact, but I do remember sitting in that meeting and listening to the board discussion, and where the board just consciously said, hey, we're not going to abide by these numbers because we felt, that we need that the school needs this, and they consciously made that value decision, rather than working on some kind of a number quota that, okay, we've got 4,000 kids, so we just need X number of PSS teams. And some of that's gonna, what I'm trying to, the point I'm trying to make is that some of that in this process is gonna have to go on. Because we're gonna have to, I think you see in this report, that there's a lot of, there was switching around. Basically, a lot of it that I saw had to do with student services, especially students with the most needs and with special needs. And I think those are community values that we're going to have to make decisions on that may not be economically, the best economic decision, but it's the best decision for the community, and for what we're about as an institution.
Maybe this is a good opportunity to pre-wire something, which is, first of all, Tony, I'm just thrilled to see in your memo that you heavily consulted the EDF sub-team of the CSC. And the interesting thing about our district is that probably the reason we're so far advanced on the EDF is that it was invented by a former board member, Ralph Martier, and a current member of the CSC, Michelle Mangan, who's part of this EDF substract. So in the November CSC, we talked about really drilling into the EDF model and tying it out to research. And Michelle and Bob Spatz agreed to be part of that EDF sub-team and do some research that attempted to tie resource allocation and deployment to research to help inform what could potentially do what you just described, Brett, is make headway on opportunity gap and a number of issues that reflect our values and goals as a district. So Bob and Michelle did a lot of good work, and they produced a rather thick report, which the CSC at large, I think, is a full draft on. So Kathleen and I have planned to put our heads together and discuss how to best thread that analysis into what the administration needs to do. And I think it's going to start with you and I talking this weekend, maybe get a cup of coffee, and then going straight to you to kind of discuss what does this mean in terms of your budget, staffing, plans, and so on. And if we can do this efficiently, it's possible that some of this analysis by the EDF sub-team could end up getting incorporated 2 weeks from now with whatever you come back with. I'm not trying to step in your lane at all. I feel like I'm kind of playing catch up here, and it's kind of my fault that I didn't drive this a little quicker because we've had this sub-team report now for a few weeks. So that is my pre-wiring statement in response to your you just touched it.
I'm just curious about, I'm thinking of the first couple of years that I was on the board, Mary Ann Monrosh frequently during these meetings would bring up criticism of the EDF model and how important it is for us to really monitor um, that field of criticism of the EBF model and how it in larger studies correlates to student achievement outcomes. And I'm just curious about how we've been holding that model accountable as we see certain things, areas of student achievement outcomes that are a little flat or less than what we anticipated, like the recent Honors for All report. There were things in there that we would rather have seen higher. And I'm wondering at what point do we take a hard look at our funding model, and hold that accountable in some way, shape, or form for some of the student achievement outcomes that we're experiencing.
I just want to point out, the outcomes that we saw in that freshman presentation in September, much of it is just flat out outstanding. Outstanding.
Oh, so
I want to be clear.
I agree, but
That's a hot button. That's a hot button. You gotta be careful about how we talk about it.
Let me just, I wanted to say there were select areas that we were that disappointed in, but there were areas around, specifically around equity, and where through the evidence-based funding model, there was, which is intended to have laser focus on those areas in particular. And I'm just, it's just a question I'm just curious about, because it had been coming up for several years since I've been on the board, about how we look at what are the more common criticisms of the model, and take and really look at our line of student achievement outcomes. And just I in no way was saying that report was not fantastic.
I just wanted to get the record
in a variety of ways. There were some areas on the report though that we would have liked to see very different, and so I'm just wanted.
I'd say ultimately, and this is where, it's a very collaborative process internally, that this is a tool in the toolbox. This is not the toolbox. And that's where, all of the members of the DLT have to get together. And, there are areas that, the EBF may be built on one line of thinking, where research, says you're better off putting your money in another category. And that's where, if it's on a construction side, it might live in my category. If it's on a, best educational research side, it'll fall very much on Dr. Hester. And that's why we have to stay versed in more than just the EBF, so that when we make these recommendations and bring ideas and spending concepts or plans forward, that they've been vetted, through multiple lenses, not just one.
Can I just build on that? Because, notwithstanding what I said before, ultimately the EBF is a blunt instrument that filled a void, and that void was nothing. It was nothing like this before, and it was really designed to address a statewide problem. Really, issues that affected many districts, not really so much OPRF, but the whole issue of discrepancy and adequacy of funding across the state because of its inordinate dependency on property tax. So in the work that I just described that we'd like to get done, that you're taking this blunt instrument and making it a little bit sharper, but it's still not going to be kind of the be-all end-all determinant of, it's going to take a lot more input than just
and I appreciate your description of it as being a tool in the toolbox. So what everything that's been said, this is something that can provide some direction and guidance, but we also have our vision, our mission, what we want to do for our students, what's important to our community, what might our students need, particularly to thrive, that may be a bit different than what this one instrument might do. So it's something that can help guide us and give us some input, but there's a lot of other decision-making and collaboration and work that goes into determining what's best for the school. So appreciate all the work that you and Brian and everybody does on this, but I know it's a big work to get this done.
Yep, and just because I'd like to point it out too, I don't want to undersell the work Brian does, because this report is not what this report is without the time he puts into it, and the time that he really in particular spent with Michelle on understanding rationale in some of the recommendations. So I just want to recognize that.
Big thanks to you. Right, thank you for the conversation, everyone. Our next topic is board governance, one of our favorite topics. I know Bob loves this topic. But I know that Fred, you have a topic you'd like to raise as part of this discussion.
Yes, and let me preface my comments by saying that as I enter my 8th decade of life, I do have my senior moments, so maybe I missed something. But I was distressed to see online that there was a motion in the Village of Oak Park by one of the trustees to amend the ordinance for the special use of our South Field lights and to extend them from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. All right. The first time I had seen or heard of it was seeing it on social media. So I'm wondering where the nexus of this is, and what the process has been to get there, because I don't see where I didn't hear anything about it. It is a board member, and I don't see where it's been a part of our discussion or our notes anywhere. It seems to me that there's some presumption on the part of the village board that may be drawn out of ignorance or arrogance. I'm not sure which, but certainly there are fields, there are lights. It's our electricity. It's going to cost to expand it, and I think that I'd like to know how this came about and where it stands with the district. Because I'm very concerned about this process. I'm very, very concerned because process does matter.
Yeah, I understand that. Let me speak to it a little bit to the extent that I'm aware. I don't know where this originally started, nor exactly when. I became aware of it just over somewhere in the 16th or 17th or something. Somebody on behalf of Little Huskies football program, which uses our facilities but is not an OPRF organization, right? Reached out to a trustee to say that it would really benefit us if we could have extended use, a later use of that field in the fall, identical, just the context, they're identical to how we use that field in the spring. In the spring, we currently have so I became aware of that, or I became aware that was a possibility. And I reached out to the village, and then as the day wore on, we went back and forth. I understood that it was being prepared for a motion, and they asked, I did some work inside the building to figure out what do we think about this, where did this come from, and in short, as a district, certainly, extended use of the fields when it's dark outside would help our programming from time to time. That's just the simple truth, right? It would help. But it wasn't until this was really coming right there to the board, to the village board for a vote that we were brought in, and my response was, certainly it would help us, but that was not part of the original ask that we had done. We were on the lights for the spring. And that's it. That's the context I have for it.
Yeah, it's very concerning.
So we were aware of it very late in the game.
That it sounds like it went directly to the village board before it came to us. And I think that in our intergovernmental organizations that this needs to be brought up, and I just think that it's just not the right way for this to have gone forward. And I think the village should, the village trustees should have come to the Board of Education. All right. Rather than to create their own motion. All right, because that's the level we should be communicating on. I mean, Greg, you and your staff communicate on a staff level with the village. Correct. All right, but a village trustee or the village president should be communicating at the board level. And it certainly doesn't look like that happened in this instance.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Greg, how does extending the lights help? 200.
Well, I mean, it gives us, it's straight flexibility. It gives us flexibility to, there were frequent times in the fall where we're running right up against 8 o'clock and it would, we want to wrap something up, and go a little bit later than that. And this allows us to do that. It also would allow us to just simply schedule the fields differently, right? As a result, if we chose to do so. But, because of this, the way this came about, we don't have a plan, right? That really is a strategic answer to your question, right? So I can just describe the flexibility it gives us at this point.
Previously the 8 o'clock shut off, was that our policy or was that village policy as far as light?
It was a function of the village ordinance. That's why I said that.
So but it was drawn out of the approval process, right? For we have the intergovernmental agreement with our district for these.
Yeah.
Right, and the lights were an issue that had to go through the plan commission and then to the board. And
the village board. Yes.
The village board. And there was some community dissent. And it's kind of 8 o'clock is where it, it leveled out for what
and that's
it's on its own level.
Those apartments, right? That's bright light, late at night.
Right. And there's, I mean, the directional lights and they're not as high as they used to be, and other things mitigated it. But I'm just, my concern is the process. I think we did by having it, the initial agreement, or the initial ordinance, was kind of a, I guess I would say, use the word commitment, that when the lights would go off at 8 o'clock, in the fall. And now my problem with this whole thing is that we've been usurped.
I mean, I completely agree with Fred. I mean, I think that it's a legitimacy issue. It's not. I don't really see how a legitimate conversation or process continues if they're in an illegitimate motion. So I don't really see. I don't understand why. It seems like it just obviously needs to be sent back, or. I don't even understand where it's at right now. This is news to me, but it doesn't seem of any consequence because in my mind, there's no legitimacy to it.
Right. I saw the social media also, and just to make sure I understand, is it just the baseball field that is correct?
It's our field, it's our south field.
Right,
It's
so
the
we should call
field
it
that is
south
primarily
field. I
baseball.
now know as baseball.
It's the baseball, the new baseball field, yes.
Right. So it
Is
is, it's southwest corner.
Is it correct, though, that if the village proceeds in altering their ordinance to allow operation of lights till 10 p.m., that in no way obligates us to do anything or means that we're going to turn the lights on up until 10?
That is correct. That's correct.
So we still retain control over when lights are on. We have a process for feeder programs and their use of it. So
correct.
Oh, so the actual motion itself doesn't have OPR in it.
all it does is, as I understand it, under the village ordinance, which controls use of lights. We're now able to turn the lights on until 10 p.m. instead of 8 p.m.
Oh, so it is in the motion.
Right, but it doesn't obligate us to do anything.
Well, but that's why I bring up the legitimacy issue. It's not a legitimate motion if it involves a process that we need to go through prior to being.
But I get that they didn't get our permission to do it.
Yeah, they can
Here,
do it with or without us.
Yeah, I mean, what I give them, they can change their ordinance because they can change their ordinance, but it doesn't work. If I understand this right, it doesn't commit us to doing anything. To change what we already have in place, unless we decide that that's something we want to do as a school.
But I think that's why Fred is focused on process.
Right, yeah.
It's not that we're being, it's not the reason, it's the process.
Yeah.
And the other aspects that I think, you know, we try to be a good neighbor. And certainly with project 2, it was true with project 3, it's true with track and fields project. We try to engage our neighbors, let them know what we're doing and get feedback and respect it. And that's simply not, I'm sure that is not happening.
From what I understand correct is that as a trustee, you brought it forward at the village, but not with any prompting or support or questioning or anything from the district.
That's we like, but I want to be clear. We became aware, you know, just over a week before this.
Does it say when this motion is up for discussion or a vote by the village?
It was on the agenda on Tuesday. And to Greg, I don't know what, did you find out what the conclusion was? On my computers.
An email from the village Wednesday that we put.
While he's doing that, are you proposing that we do some type of protest or intervention to prevent the?
Grant your manual, you just on it at 9 o'clock cutoff to remind us to. To clean the thing, which is all forgiven, everybody, and I didn't miss that cutoff.
My apologies.
You're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go if you need to go. Sorry, Greg.
So are you proposing that we undertake
No,
intervention or protest?
No, I mean, my proposal is that we have a conversation at the board level with the village of Oak Park. To say to them, hey, what the process that happened here was wrong and it shouldn't happen again. All right. When there is an issue that's at a board level like this, you should be communicating with our board. All right. If it's an administrative thing, fine. Your village manager talks to our superintendent. I'm just concerned that my biggest concern is that wasn't respected.
Got it. So this is more about,
Right.
hey, next time. It is not in any way, we want to derail, protest, or intervene with this.
No, but I think Tim makes a very, very good point about being a good neighbor. It didn't give us the opportunity to do that.
All right, so this is you're suggesting, let's have it next time.
Yeah.
Right.
That I'll support, but I wouldn't support trying to derail our.
Any other questions or comments under governance? Look at this. But that was important that we talk about this for the citizens. And I want to make sure we have a chance to understand what was going on. Return like the board. The board. The only other, well, I have one other item under governance, because we talked about this at our last meeting, about understanding like what committees we have, and future board committees. And I believe we only have two board committees, which are CFC and CCB. I'm missing something.
And the committee of the whole is.
Oh, the committee of the whole, right? Yeah.
I suppose that's
Committee of the whole is technically a board.
That's correct.
Because a question had come up before about the charter being updated for CFC. Did we need another? Do we need anything for other board committees? Since we only have one other, which is CCB, which is one that's required. I guess my question for the group, required by law. Do we feel we have a need for a charter related to CCB?
I don't feel strongly about it, but in general, it seems to me, why not? So in such a charter, we could specify membership and articulate the duties. So I understand it means a statutory requirement, but it seems to me like it would be value added to have a charter that outlines more details around it. So I would be in favor of that, but again, I don't feel really strongly.
Yeah, especially, the size of the committee, the membership selection process, I think would be to understand how that transpires.
Your thoughts, agree, disagree, where you are?
I think also having a charter would also, provide the explanation rationale for the CCD fulfilling the obligations of the other two committees. What was it, PTAC and what was the
Behavioral education.
behavior and the major.
Can't go wrong with a good charter.
All right, anything else? Sam, you look like you're a conduit. Not really. Anything else under board governance? All right, now just, for information, the, Q2, FY 26 variance report, was included with our materials. And now we can do a roundtable with respect to our district, community, and state reports, for committees. I'll kick off with the two that I attended, one for iGov and also for the, Council of Governments. So both met this past month. And with iGov, we actually had Mary Reynolds from the Collab came to talk about early childhood education. That presentation is pretty similar to what we heard in our December meeting, but it's a good opportunity to reinforce the work that they're doing. And for the other, agencies and groups that aren't as familiar with the work that the Collab does, to learn a bit more about them. And then we are hoping within the next month to go live with our iGov site that will be housed on the Oak Park Public Library site. So just a place for information and details and things about our value, our vision, our history, and also working to plan a spring forum. And then with the Council of Governments, and the biggest difference between iGov and Council of Governments is that Council of Governments includes the elected officials plus the leaders for each organization. So Greg is on that group as well. And for that one, just updates about what's going on. A lot of conversation about how we might be able to help support each other in the community as different issues and topics come up, and we hear things, we know things, how we communicate, share information. D97 is getting very close to a superintendent, so we should hopefully. That's what I meant. Having met and getting close to a superintendent, I'd love to get on that track. So that now is great to have that role filled to be able to move forward with our collaboration. CFC, Graham, you kind of gave up the things you guys have been doing, so Kathleen, anything else on CFC?
Yeah, I don't think there's any update from CFC since the last notice.
Okay. What about CCD?
Good speak. So we had our meeting last week that satisfied the PTAC statutory requirement. The administration brought forth 3 revisions to the BEP. The committee, the consensus was to move forward with those. So we will see those at the board table in March. All 3 have to do with our systems and the ways to address that behavior. Dr. Williams led sort of a contextualizing of a conversation around race. And in our March, April meetings, the plan is to continue that conversation. Really, the idea is to look at the behaviors that have led in the past few years at this high school to expulsions. And there is an enormous racial disparity in the students who are engaging in those behaviors
So the conversation is really trying to dig into the reasons for that, and if there are changes in our approach and changes in BEP, different ways of looking at those behaviors and so on. So that's the intention for the question.
Okay, Sam. Capital,
We have no updates as far as samples.
sustainability.
The sustainability committee had a good meeting, I believe earlier this very same week, even though it seems like 100 years ago. And some of you may be aware that Tom Kofsky has taken on a kind of community leadership role within the sustainability committee and is specifically working with the committee on advancing the district's sustainability plan. So kind of working through there. I think the main update for the board to be aware of, a couple of things, some good work around energy purchases and trying to do forecasting on as especially electricity costs are rising, some preliminary thinking about how to manage those costs going forward. But also there was a request for the board to take a look in an upcoming meeting at the sustainability policy, and then a couple of questions about whether some actions that are outlined in the sustainability plan are necessary or not, given the way the policy is written. So we have a little bit of board homework to do related to the relationship between the policy and the plan.
That's great. Can I just really quickly add that it would be great if in, sooner or later in the next few months, we could bring a revised sustainability policy to the board. So after that work gets through the sustainability committee, we'll bring it to our policy committee, bring that forward hopefully by the end of the year.
So rather than the board taking a look at the existing policy, first do some work on the policy and.
Well, it sounds like in previous conversations that I've had with Tom and others, it seems like the policy itself needs some updating. And so that recommendation, I think, makes sense to come initially from the sustainability committee. So that's what I mean.
Thanks, Emily. Facilities committee?
We
Okay. River Forest Community Collaboration.
We met last night, and there are a few items of note that I sort of passed along. D90 has completed its latest round of contract negotiations with their teachers union. They have come to a second agreement. The teachers will vote on that this coming week. They are hopeful and optimistic that the vote will pass this time around, and they've already scheduled a special board meeting to approve the deal. So fingers crossed. It's been a long and winding road for D90. D90 has also selected and hired their new superintendent. Ed Condon is retiring at the end of this school year. They have chosen the current superintendent of the Carbondale Elementary School District, and she will begin in River Forest on July 1st. This is just sort of something for us to keep in the back of our minds as we consider P3 funding options over the course of the next 6 months. But the River Forest Township and D90 are sort of talking very, very generally about referendums. Not anytime soon, not anything scheduled. For the township, they're trying to assess the state of the River Forest Civic Center. It's decades past a lot of maintenance, roof, HVAC. They're doing a deep assessment of what's needed and also a needs assessment. Sounds familiar. And so they are thinking that, somewhere down the road, there may be a referendum necessary. Again, not for sure, dates, timeline, but that could be coming down the pike. D90 similarly, I guess part of the teacher contract negotiations, and they have stated this publicly, that they feel like they are kind of on a glide path to, in the next 3 or 4 years, needing to do a hovering referendum.
in River Forest. So, yeah, just something for us all to have in the back of our minds, our community, well, for obvious reasons. One more thing, Audrey, you had asked me to ask about opportunities for community outreach in River Forest, and by far our best opportunity is the Lemonade event that is every September 11th. That event's kind of in transition. It's been a single block at Bonnie Gray in River Forest that's sponsored that for 25 years, and now it's transitioning into the River Forest Township, taking over the leadership of it and organizing. They would love for us to have a tent or any kind of presence. It's a really, really well attended event in River Forest. Every elementary school kid goes there after school, young families, it's parents and kids, and so it would be just a great opportunity for us to spread the good word about their right. So yeah, so September 11th.
Okay, we'll get it down. And Tim, thank you for that. Something I should have said with respect to our board goals. Josh and I talked about communications, and the reason I reached out to Tim with the River Forest agencies is really understanding where there are opportunities for us to just plug into events that are going on in our communities as part of our efforts to just be more visible, to communicate, talk to people, just have a presence. And so rather than doing something just for the board, like in groups 2s or 1s, is going out to the community. And so I've reached out to the Oak Park groups, as Tim with River Forest, and we're just going to identify ways that we can help support each other and support for our goals of community. Community council. Anything that recently done?
It was rescheduled for tonight.
Tonight, right, okay, I did remember that, I did remember seeing that. Okay, and then anything like applause, Josh?
Yeah, so, Rent is coming up. We have Tech Week next week. They're soliciting donations for gift baskets, and volunteers to help us set up and clean out snacks, desserts, and meals. If anyone's interested, they can reach out to Bush Sandy Plus Secretary at Secretary, and Claude will be around over. Yeah, anyone who is interested in seeing Rent, we buy tickets.
And for Scholarship Foundation or Alumni Association?
Scholarship Foundation.
Same
Moving
thing.
forward
Okay.
with
Scholarship
programs,
Yeah. And they started because decisions yet? Have they started when do they start giving out scholarships, or when do they make decisions? Do you know? I know there are a lot of different scholarships listed.
there are.
In January, yeah.
I don't know when our next meeting is, but I think it's coming soon.
Yeah.
Because, those are all announced at the end of, the semester.
Yeah.
Before graduation, around the awards time.
Yeah, the hours convocation, which that's officially consent.
Okay, so they'll officially ask them. Great. Jonathan, anything else on the collaboration?
So we have continued to our IGA working group meeting bi-weekly. We're rescheduling that meeting at the moment, but we'll be resuming those meetings. What the new time sign up. But we did, hopefully I mentioned in the last meeting, because we met the night prior, did mention that we had presented the redlined amended IGA agreement that we were working on at the IGA meeting. For additional feedback, that went really well. The goal is to have the amended agreement sent to our respective boards for approval in the coming months. One item that we discussed recently in the working group that I think is not only very relevant and timely. It's looking at the amounts that each agency gives to the collaboration through this agreement, and that those amounts have been flat for nearly a decade now. And we in the working group were certainly in agreement that it's high time to revisit that the amounts that we're contributing to the collab for this effort. And so that's going to start with kind of looking at probably engaging the collab and Bob's Bass, probably just looking at just how is each number, what went into determining each of those additional amounts. But anyway, that in theory should, we'd like to have the amended agreement and that new ask all baked into the same action, same document.
So that's it for our various committees, and now future agenda items. The one I did capture so far is around sustainability policy. Any others? No?
One, I really appreciated Tony and Brian explaining what the budget process is, and I have one that's related to that. I would like for us to receive a briefing and really what I want is a meaningful opportunity to engage on our healthcare plan and any changes to that plan. It's an enormous spend. And the last 2 years, we have really not had any role in the policy decisions that go into that spend. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think that we should be part of that decision-making process far earlier than we have been in the last 2 years. Last year it came to us, I believe, in November as a fait accompli. The presentation was, you approved in the budget a certain percentage. We came in out of that percentage, and so here's the plan. I think that there are policy considerations, policy decisions that go into that are frankly, if not the board's sole responsibility, I think that we have an obligation to engage and be part of that conversation. It sounds like from what Tony and Brian described, we've already started getting some materials from our consultant. Those conversations have begun. I don't know, the administration has to think about this. I don't know when the appropriate time would be, obviously, for that kind of an early conversation. But I really would ask that it be at a point where we can have some meaningful role in those policy decisions.
Any others? With that, I, Williamsley, move to adjourn at 9:42 p.m.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. We need adjourned.